For 20 years, Daniel Brooks lived peacefully in his lake cabin. It wasn't fancy, but it was his sanctuary, surrounded by pines, with the water shimmering just steps from his porch. He had inherited the place from his father, who had been one of the first to settle by Maple Lake. The cabin had its quirks, but one thing it always had was steady water. Daniel never questioned why. The Maple Lake HOA, led by its polished president, Cheryl Grant, promised modernization. They held glossy meetings, sent newsletters full of rules, and raised fees under the banner of community improvement. Daniel, being outside their main subdivision, was technically not a member, but that didn't stop them from trying to control him. One July morning, he turned on his kitchen tap. Nothing. The faucet wheezed out a few drops, then silence. A notice tacked to his door read, "Back in the 1970s, before the lakefront lots were developed, Daniel's father had laid the main pipeline from the spring into the valley. The cabins and houses that later sprouted around the lake all tied into that same water line. Over time, as the HOA formed and expanded, they forgot, or never knew, that the system still traced back to the Brooks property. Daniel knew every valve, every shutoff, and every underground junction. The HOA might think they controlled the water, but in truth, their entire network ran through the old cabin's land. Within days, the HOA board began sending threats. They fined Daniel for non-participation, accused him of damaging property values, and even tried to shame him at a community meeting. Cheryl Grant stood at the podium, crisp in her blazer, declaring, "We cannot allow one non-compliant cabin to undermine progress. Everyone must contribute or face the consequences." Neighbors glanced at Daniel with sympathy, but no one dared speak up. The HOA had fined people for mismatched paint colors and even for leaving a kayak on the wrong rack. Daniel stayed calm. He had no need to argue. Instead, he walked home, pulled out his father's old blueprint of the water system, and smiled. That night, Daniel hiked out to the main control shed hidden in the woods. With a single turn of the wheel, the line feeding the HOA subdivision went bone dry. Lawn sprinklers sputtered, dishwashers quit mid-cycle, showers stopped cold. By morning, chaos had broken out. The HOA's pristine lawns browned under the sun, families carried buckets from the lake, and complaints flew across the community message board. Cheryl stormed up to Daniel's cabin with 2 board members in tow. "You cut off our water," she snapped. Daniel sipped his coffee on the porch, unbothered. "Funny, I don't recall joining your system. Maybe there's a bigger problem in your setup." The HOA tried calling contractors, but every plumber who inspected the system traced the pipes back to one place, Daniel's land. Some even remembered his father installing the original line. The truth spread quickly. The entire community's plumbing depended on the very cabin they had tried to isolate. Suddenly, the HOA wasn't threatening Daniel anymore. They were begging. Offers of waived fees, free maintenance, and even honorary membership poured in. Cheryl, however, refused to admit defeat. She insisted on taking legal action. But the county records told the same story. The water rights and the original system all belonged to the Brooks family. The HOA had built their empire on a line they didn't even own. Daniel finally called a meeting, not in their fancy clubhouse, but on his own porch. Dozens of neighbors showed up, weary of the board's tactics. "You all want water," Daniel began. "Fine, I'll keep the system running. But here are my conditions. No more harassment, no more bogus fines, and no more trying to strong-arm people who live outside your subdivision. You respect the lake, and you respect my land, or the taps stay dry." For once, the board stayed silent. Residents, however, cheered. The balance of power had shifted. Within weeks, the HOA fractured. Families frustrated with Cheryl's stubbornness voted in new leadership. The new board agreed to Daniel's terms and even funded proper maintenance for the decades-old pipeline. As for Daniel, life returned to normal at his cabin. His father's old system still hummed beneath the earth, reminding him that sometimes the quietest people hold the strongest leverage. The lake rippled gently under the evening sky, and Daniel chuckled to himself. The HOA had tried to cut off his water, but in the end, he controlled theirs.